The morning sun peeked through the trees in Maple Hollow, Oregon, a quiet town where everyone knew everyone, and secrets didn't stay buried for long. But on October 5th, 2024, a kind of silence fell over the town that no one could explain. That silence began at the Redmond residence, a pale yellow two-story house with white shutters and a wraparound porch. By noon, the place would be crawling with cops, neighbors whispering behind fences, and one teenager standing in tears with blood on his shirt. 16-year-old Jacob Redmond made the 911 call at exactly 10:36 a.m. His voice was shaking as he spoke. "My mom, she's dead. I think, I think someone killed her." Police arrived within minutes. Detective Thomas Hale, a seasoned investigator with 25 years on the force, was called in after the first responding officers realized this wasn't a simple case. Hale had seen it all: domestic violence, fraud, gang violence. But this felt different. The scene was too clean, the tears too timed. Something felt off. Inside the house, Hale found Margaret Redmond, age 42, slumped at the bottom of the attic stairs. Her neck was broken, her eyes wide open in fear. But there were no bruises, no signs of forced entry, and nothing was stolen. It looked like an accident, until the medical examiner whispered something to Hale as he zipped up the body bag. "This isn't just a fall. Someone helped her down those stairs." Jacob, her only son, had no visible injuries. He claimed he found her like that after waking up. His father, David Redmond, had died in a car crash 3 years earlier, leaving the boy and his mother alone in the house. While the officers questioned Jacob on the porch, neighbors gathered. Mrs. Klein from next door said she'd heard shouting the night before. Mr. Dorsey, 2 houses down, claimed he saw a figure in a hoodie leaving the Redmonds' driveway around midnight. But the town was used to gossip. Hale needed facts. Back inside, Hale noticed the attic door. Something compelled him to climb the steps. The attic smelled of dust and mothballs, and at first glance, it looked like any other attic. Old boxes, a few family albums, some broken furniture. But then he saw it, deep scratch marks on the wooden floor, as though something or someone had been dragged. He took photos, bagged a torn piece of red fabric caught on a nail, and called it in. This was no fall. This was murder. As the investigation began, Jacob suddenly changed his story. 2 days later, during an official interview, he looked Hale in the eye and said, "It wasn't me. It was her. My mom. She killed someone, and they came for her." The room went silent. Who was they? Why would someone want Margaret Redmond dead? And most importantly, was Jacob protecting someone or himself? Detective Hale scribbled in his notebook. The puzzle had just begun, and something in his gut told him the truth was buried deep, maybe in the attic, maybe in the past. But it would come out. One thing was certain: Jacob was hiding something. Detective Thomas Hale sat across from Jacob Redmond in the sterile interview room at the Maple Hollow Police Department. The walls were dull gray. The only sounds were the humming light overhead and the ticking clock on the wall. Jacob's eyes were red from crying, his hands trembling as he gripped a bottle of water. Hale leaned forward slowly. "Jacob, I need you to be honest with me. You said your mother was killed because she killed someone. That's a very serious claim. Who did she kill?" Jacob's lips trembled. "I don't know his name, but I saw it happen 2 weeks ago, in the attic." The words hit Hale like a wave. "Start from the beginning," he said calmly, flipping open his notebook. Jacob swallowed hard and began. "It was a Friday night. I couldn't sleep, so I went upstairs to grab an old game console from the attic. Mom didn't like me going up there. She always said it was unsafe, full of junk. But that night I heard her up there. Voices, a man's voice. I peeked through the crack in the attic door." He looked away, ashamed. "What did you see?" Hale asked. "She was arguing with a man. He was older, maybe in his 50s. I couldn't hear much, but he said something like, 'You can't keep this buried forever, Margaret.' She screamed at him, told him to leave. Then I heard a loud crash. When I looked again, he was lying on the floor. He wasn't moving." Hale kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. "What happened next?" "She didn't know I was watching. She dragged him to the corner behind some boxes. She covered him with a tarp. I ran back to my room and pretended to sleep. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. Did you tell anyone? Jacob shook his head. I didn't know if she'd hurt me too. Hale sat back in his chair. If Jacob was telling the truth, then Margaret Redmond had killed someone, and someone else found out and retaliated. But where was the body? The attic had been searched. There was no tarp, no corpse. Why didn't you tell us this the day she died? Hale asked. I didn't want to speak bad about my mom. I kept hoping it wasn't real. But I think the man had family. Maybe they came for her. Hale nodded slowly. What happened the night before your mom died? Jacob looked haunted. She was acting weird, nervous, locking doors, jumping at noises. She barely slept. I heard her whispering on the phone. I think she knew something was coming. That matched what neighbors had reported. The shouting, the strange figure in the driveway. But if this was revenge, the killer had gone to great lengths to make it look like an accident. Hale stood. We'll need to search that attic again. That afternoon, a forensics team returned to the Redmond house. They combed every inch of the attic. Behind a stack of paint cans, they found dried blood soaked into the wooden floorboards. Luminol revealed a blood trail leading to a now empty corner. Someone had cleaned up, but not perfectly. Then they found a small key hidden beneath a loose board. It was labeled shed. Behind the Redmond house, the garden shed had been padlocked. No one had thought to open it until now. Inside was darkness, dust, and the overwhelming stench of decay. Hale shone his flashlight on a pile of rotting fabric, and beneath it, the decomposed remains of a man's body. The crime scene was confirmed. Jacob's story was real, but the question now was, who was the dead man? And why did Margaret Redmond kill him? Hale stood by the body, jaw clenched. Something told him this was only the beginning. Detective Hale watched silently as the coroner's team lifted the decomposing body from the shed floor. The smell was heavy, even with masks, and flies buzzed thick around the scene. Margaret Redmond had dragged this man's body from the attic, locked it away, and pretended nothing had happened. But nothing stayed hidden forever, not in Maple Hollow. By nightfall, the shed was taped off, and the body had been sent to the county lab in Portland for identification. Hale's mind was already spinning with possibilities. Who was this man? Why had he threatened Margaret? And what had really happened 2 weeks ago? The next morning, the forensics lab called. The body's fingerprints matched a man named Russell Clayton, age 53, recently released from prison in California. His record included burglary, fraud, and, most importantly, blackmail. He'd served 5 years for extorting a woman who had once hired him to get rid of some documents. The twist? Russell Clayton had lived in Maple Hollow 20 years ago. Hale drove to the Maple Hollow Town Records office and pulled anything he could find on Clayton. There wasn't much, but one article from 2002 caught his eye. Local woman's baby dies in house fire. The article showed a picture of Margaret Redmond, much younger, her face pale with grief. According to the story, her newborn daughter had died in a fire caused by an electrical fault. Back at the station, Hale laid the pieces out. 22 years ago, Margaret had lost a baby in a fire. Now Russell Clayton, known for blackmail, shows up at her house and ends up dead. Hale had a gut feeling the fire wasn't an accident, and maybe Clayton knew the truth. Later that afternoon, Hale returned to Jacob for another round of questioning. The boy sat stiffly in the same gray-walled room, eyes bloodshot but calmer now. Jacob, Hale said gently, do you know the name Russell Clayton? Jacob's brow furrowed. Number should I? Hale studied his face. That's the man your mom killed. He used to live here. Did she ever mention anything about a fire? A baby? Jacob went pale. She always told me I was her only child. She was pregnant when she was 20. The baby supposedly died in a fire in 2002. Jacob's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Hale continued. Clayton was in prison for blackmail. It's possible he knew something about that fire. Maybe even caused it. Or maybe your mom did. He shows up at your house 2 weeks ago. She kills him and hides the body. Then someone kills her. Jacob looked like his world had tilted. I think your mom kept a lot of secrets, Hale said. We just need to find out which one got her killed. As Hale left the interview room, Officer Bryant ran up to him. Detective, you'll want to see this. We pulled data from Margaret's phone. In her recent calls was an unsaved number, called 5 times the week before her death. They traced it to a woman named Sandra Blake, living 2 hours away in Eugene, Oregon. When Hale looked her up, his eyes widened. Sandra Blake was Russell, Clayton's sister. It was time for a road trip. As Hale prepared to leave town, he couldn't shake the feeling that Margaret had been desperate to keep the past buried, and that her son, despite everything, still didn't know the full truth. But Hale intended to find it. Detective Hale arrived in Eugene, Oregon, just before noon the next day. The drive from Maple Hollow was long and winding, giving him too much time to think. Margaret Redmond's life was full of holes, and Russell Clayton's sudden reappearance hadn't been a coincidence. The key now was Sandra Blake, Clayton's sister. Sandra lived in a modest white house on a quiet street lined with maple trees. A faded, no soliciting sign hung crooked on her front gate. Hale knocked twice. After a pause, a tired-looking woman in her 50s opened the door. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes were wary. "Ms. Blake, I'm Detective Thomas Hale, Maple Hollow Police. May I come in?" She hesitated. "This is about my brother, isn't it?" Hale nodded. "We found his body at Margaret Redmond's property." Sandra blinked. Her lips tightened, but she didn't act surprised. "I figured. When he stopped calling, I knew something went wrong." Inside, Sandra poured 2 cups of black coffee and sat across from Hale at her kitchen table. "Tell me everything," he said. Sandra took a deep breath. "Russell was bad news. Always had been. But he was my brother. When he got out of prison last year, he promised he'd go clean. Instead, he got obsessed with one thing, Margaret Redmond." "Why her?" "Because of the fire," she said quietly. "Years ago, Russell told me something I never repeated. He said that fire wasn't an accident. He said Margaret lit it herself." Hale sat up straighter. "What?" Sandra nodded. "He claimed he was with her that night. They were together, sort of. She told him she didn't want the baby, that it ruined her life. He didn't stop her. Later, he said she struck a match and left the house." Hale's stomach turned. "But he didn't tell the police," Sandra went on. "Said he was scared they'd pin it on him, too. So he kept quiet, until now. He thought he could use it." "To blackmail her," Sandra nodded. "He said he'd ask for 50 grand. She had a nice house, a steady job, a teenage son. He figured she could pay." "Did she?" "He went to see her 2 weeks ago. Called me after. Said she'd freaked out, denied everything at first. But then, he said she cried, said she admitted it, and begged him to go away. He planned to go back the next day and press harder. That was the last time I heard from him." Hale leaned back, heart pounding. This meant Margaret did kill her baby and confessed it to Russell. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Sandra looked down. "Would they believe me? My brother was a criminal. I didn't want to drag my family through it." Hale stood. "Sandra, thank you. You may be called in for a statement." As he left her house, the truth weighed heavy. Margaret Redmond had gotten away with murder once, until the past caught up with her. But something still didn't fit. Why would she kill Russell, and then panic so badly? And who killed her? Back in Maple Hollow, Hale returned to the evidence room. One of Margaret's old notebooks, pulled from her attic, caught his eye. Most of the pages were blank, but halfway through, written in shaky handwriting, was a single line. "He knows about the fire. And now, so does Jacob." Hale froze. Jacob knew more than he'd said. The next morning, Hale made his way back to the Redmond house. Jacob was sitting alone in his room, headphones on, staring out the window. Hale knocked on the doorframe. "Jacob, we need to talk again." The boy turned. His eyes were hollow but alert. "Did your mom ever tell you about the fire?" Hale asked. Jacob hesitated. But a week ago, I heard her on the phone, crying, saying, he'll tell Jacob everything. Then she burned some papers in the fireplace. I tried to look, but she caught me." "What kind of papers?" "I don't know, but they had baby photos. I saw one. There was a crib. It wasn't me." Hale's heart sank. Margaret had destroyed the last traces of her first child, and Jacob had started to put it all together. The guilt, the lies, the blackmail. It had all exploded into tragedy. Now the final mystery remained. Who killed Margaret? And Hale knew just where to look next. He needed to find the man seen on the Redmonds' driveway the night of the murder. Detective Hale stood in front of the Redmonds' security monitor, rewinding the grainy footage once again. The camera, mounted above the garage, had captured a crucial moment, a figure walking up the driveway at 9:17 p.m., the night Margaret Redmond was murdered. The man wore a hoodie and jeans, his face mostly obscured, but Hale's sharp eye caught a detail everyone else had missed, a limp in the left leg, subtle but consistent with every step. He zoomed in on a frame where the man briefly turned his head toward the porch light. The image was blurred, but the jawline and goatee stood out. Hale paused the video and called in Officer Bryant. "You recognize this man?" Hale asked, pointing to the screen. Bryant squinted. "Could be Derek Hunt, Jacob's former football coach. He walks like that. Took a knee injury last fall." "Why would a coach be visiting Margaret at night?" Hale muttered. Bryant shrugged. "He left the school a few months ago. Said it was personal." Hale opened Derek Hunt's personnel file and frowned. The man had been quietly let go due to an anonymous complaint about unprofessional conduct with a parent. No charges were filed, no names were listed. Hale had a bad feeling. Within the hour, Hale was knocking on Derek Hunt's apartment door. It was a cluttered two-bedroom unit on the second floor of a rundown complex in downtown Maple Hollow. Derek opened the door with a half-smile that vanished the moment he saw the badge. "Detective Hale? What's this about? Mind if I come in?" Derek stepped aside reluctantly. The place smelled of cheap aftershave and stale pizza. A PlayStation hummed in the corner. "We're investigating Margaret Redmond's murder. You knew her well?" Derek crossed his arms. "She was Jacob's mother. We talked sometimes. You were seen at her house the night she died." He tensed. "I stopped by. That's not illegal. What did you two talk about?" Derek's jaw clenched. "Personal stuff." "Did it have anything to do with Jacob?" Hale asked. A pause. "She told me she was being blackmailed. Said someone was threatening to expose something from her past. She was scared. I offered to help." "Help? How?" "She said she didn't have the money to pay the guy off. I told her I could scare him off. But she refused. She was paranoid, thought Jacob might find out." Hale didn't buy the performance. "And then?" "She asked me to leave." "I did." Hale stared at him. "Derek, Margaret's body was found hours later, stabbed in the back. You had motive. You were there, and you limped your way into the security footage." "I didn't kill her." Derek's voice rose. "I cared about her, all right. We had a thing. She pushed me away when things got messy." "You were in love with her?" He looked away. "Yeah, and she used me." Hale noticed a bruise on Derek's right forearm. "How'd you get that?" Derek hesitated. "Lifting weights." "Where were you between 9:30 and midnight?" I drove around, didn't go anywhere." "No one can confirm that?" "No." Hale stood. "We'll be taking your shoes and your jacket for forensic testing. If your prints or fibers match what we found on her back porch, we'll know." Derek swallowed hard but didn't protest. Back at the station, Hale ordered a search of Derek's car and apartment. The next day, the lab report came in. A pair of work gloves found in Derek's trunk contained traces of Margaret's blood. It was enough for an arrest, but Hale wasn't celebrating. Something still didn't fit. Why would Derek kill the woman he claimed to love? Why wait until after Russell Clayton's murder to act? And most of all, how did Jacob's name end up in all of this? Later that night, Hale got a call from the forensics team. "Detective," the analyst said, "we tested those burned documents pulled from the Redmond fireplace. Find anything?" "We reconstructed part of a letter, addressed to Jacob. Looks like Margaret was writing a confession, telling him everything about the fire." Hale's blood ran cold. She planned to tell Jacob the truth, and someone who read that letter, decided to silence her, which meant Jacob Redmond might not be just a witness anymore. The air was thick in Maple Hollow the next morning. A gray fog clung to the trees, and Detective Hale felt it settle in his chest like a warning. The pieces were aligning. Russell Clayton, the fire, the confession letter. But something deeper was hiding beneath it all. He pulled up to the Redmond house just after 9 a.m. Jacob was already sitting on the front steps, hoodie pulled over his head, a half-empty cereal bowl in his hand. "Morning," Hale said calmly. Jacob looked up slowly. "Did you arrest him?" You mean Coach Hunt? Hale nodded. We did, but that's not why I'm here. Jacob set the bowl aside, his eyes fixed on Hale. Then why? Because I believe your mother wrote you a letter, a confession. Do you know anything about that? Jacob looked away. She was burning papers the night before she, you know. I tried to grab one, but she slapped my hand, said it was private. She was writing to you, Jacob, Hale said gently. We recovered part of the letter. She was going to tell you about the baby, the fire, everything. Jacob went pale. I knew something was wrong, he whispered. I always felt it. She hated pictures of when I was little. She never talked about my dad or anything before I was born. It was like she didn't exist before me. Hale nodded. That's what secrets do. They erase parts of people. Jacob swallowed hard. So, Coach Hunt killed her? We found her blood on his gloves, but the case isn't closed yet. Hale paused. There's one more thing, Jacob. I need to ask you about the knife. Jacob blinked. What knife? The one used to kill your mother. It wasn't Russell's, and it wasn't Coach Hunt's. It came from your house, from your kitchen. We dusted for prints. Only 2 sets came back. Your mom's and yours. Jacob's hands shook slightly. I cook sometimes. She lets me help. We found it hidden in your laundry hamper, Hale said quietly. Wrapped in one of your shirts. Jacob stood up, eyes wide now. I didn't kill her. I swear, I didn't. Hale stayed calm. Then tell me what happened that night. All of it. Jacob looked down, shoulders trembling. I came home after hanging out at Miles' house. Around 9. I walked in, and I heard her arguing with someone. I didn't see who. It was just yelling in the back. I went upstairs. A few minutes later, it got quiet. Then I heard the front door slam. He paused, breathing hard. I came downstairs, and she was on the floor. There was blood. I freaked out. I didn't know what to do. I saw the knife. I panicked. I wrapped it and hid it because I thought they'd blame me. Why? Jacob looked up, eyes filling with tears. Because she told me I wasn't supposed to be alive, that she didn't want me, that I ruined her life. That night, she was crying and saying all these things. I think she knew everything was falling apart. Hale listened carefully. The pain in Jacob's voice was raw, not rehearsed. What about Russell Clayton? Did you see him? But I found a note in her room a few days before. Said, we're not done, $50,000 or your son learns everything. I didn't understand it until now. Hale sighed. This boy had been living in a pressure cooker of secrets, and now, 2 bodies later, the pressure had exploded. Jacob, Hale said gently, there's one more thing you need to know. Your mom didn't just confess in the letter. She left behind a voicemail. She called someone. At 8:59 p.m., she said, tell Jacob I'm sorry. I tried to protect him, but I couldn't do it anymore. Who'd she call? You. Jacob pulled out his phone with shaking hands. A single missed voicemail from that night. He'd never opened it. He pressed play. Her voice came through, shaky, tired, and full of regret. Jacob, if you're hearing this, I need you to know the truth. You had a sister. I lost her. I burned everything. I thought I could move on, but I was wrong. You deserve better than me. If anything happens to me, I hope this helps you understand. I'm sorry. The message ended. Jacob dropped the phone. He was sobbing now. Hale rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. You didn't kill her, Jacob, but someone close to her did. Someone who feared what she might finally reveal. The case wasn't over. Margaret Redmond had been silenced, but not by her own guilt or by Derek Hunt's jealousy. There was one last secret left to uncover, and Hale had just realized who was hiding it. Detective Hale didn't sleep that night. Margaret's voicemail kept echoing in his head. Her quiet, broken voice filled with secrets and sorrow. The missing sister, the fire, the fear. But it wasn't just grief. It was guilt, and guilt always had a witness. At sunrise, Hale sat in his car outside the Maple Hollow nursing home, flipping through a file. He hadn't thought to come here until the voicemail led him down one last, dusty path. Margaret's mother, Judith Paxton. She was 83, widowed, and diagnosed with moderate dementia. Margaret had placed her in care 4 years earlier and visited once every 3 months, always alone. But last year something changed. Jacob started visiting too. Inside, Hale met Nurse Lori, who recognized Jacob immediately. "He's a sweet kid," she said. "Very patient. Brings her flowers and lemon candies. Sometimes reads to her." "Did Margaret ever mention a second child?" Hale asked. The nurse hesitated. "Just once. She came in crying. Judith had called her by another name. Claire said, 'Why did you let the house burn?' Margaret went pale and ran out. That was 2 months ago." Claire. That was the name on the damaged birth certificate found in Margaret's desk drawer. Hale walked to Judith's room and knocked lightly. The old woman sat in a chair by the window, wrapped in a blue blanket, her thin fingers turning the pages of a photo album. "Judith," he said gently, "can we talk about Margaret?" She blinked slowly. "My Margaret. She always wanted to be a dancer. Ended up a nurse instead. Do you remember a fire?" Her eyes sharpened. "They told me she fell asleep with candles burning. That's not true. She locked the girl in. I screamed, but it was too late." Hale leaned in. "The girl, was she your granddaughter?" Judith nodded, voice barely a whisper. "Claire, born 2 years before Jacob. Margaret didn't want her, said she was the reason she never got to leave this town." "What happened after the fire?" "They said it was an accident, but I knew. Margaret never forgave herself. That's why she kept Jacob so close. She was terrified he'd turn against her." "Did you tell Jacob the truth?" "No, but someone else did." "Who?" Judith's eyes drifted to a photo on the nightstand. It was of a man standing beside a teenage Jacob at a baseball game. "Russell Clayton." Hale stared. It all made sense. Russell knew the truth. Maybe he was the father of Claire. Maybe he'd been told years later. Either way, he tried to blackmail Margaret. When she refused, he threatened to go public. She snapped and killed him. Then she tried to fix it, tried to protect Jacob by writing the letter and leaving the voicemail. But someone else couldn't let that truth surface. Someone who'd been watching, waiting. Hale drove back to the Redmond house where Jacob sat silently on the porch. "I need you to think hard," Hale said. "The night your mom died, you said you heard arguing. Are you sure Coach Hunt was the voice?" Jacob frowned. "It was a man, but no, it didn't sound like Coach. It was quieter, almost scared. Could it have been your uncle?" Jacob's eyes widened. "Uncle Paul?" "Paul Redmond, Margaret's brother. He lived 2 blocks away, worked at a mechanic shop, always quiet, always on the fringe. He'd helped raise Jacob when Margaret worked double shifts, and he had the most to lose if the truth came out, because Paul had known all along." Hale drove straight to Paul's house. The man answered the door in greasy overalls, chewing on toast. "What's this?" Paul asked. "I know you were there the night Margaret died." Paul went stiff. "Russell's death scared her. She was going to tell Jacob everything. You couldn't let that happen." Paul's eyes darted. "She was spiraling, man. I tried to stop her. You stabbed her in the back. She was going to ruin Jacob's life, his whole identity. What good would that do?" Paul's voice cracked. "He's all I had left of that family." "You confessed without realizing it," Hale said quietly. "We found your fingerprints on the doorframe. You told Nurse Lori years ago that Margaret should have burned too. And Judith confirmed you knew about Claire." Paul sat down heavily on the stairs. "She begged me not to tell him. Then Russell got involved. Then she panicked and killed him. And I knew it was all crashing down." "So you cleaned it up," Hale said. "You used a kitchen knife, snuck out after she fell asleep writing that letter, and stabbed her. Then you planted evidence on Coach Hunt and watched him take the fall." Paul didn't answer. He didn't have to. Hale placed the cuffs on Paul Redmond's wrists as Jacob watched from across the street, a storm of confusion on his face. The truth was ugly. His mother had killed his father to hide her past. His uncle had killed his mother to hide hers. And he, the boy in the middle, had almost paid the price for both. That night, Jacob sat by the lake behind the Redmond house, listening to the wind ripple the surface. Detective Hale sat beside him in silence. "Do people ever recover from something like this?" Jacob asked. Hale stared at the water. Not all at once, but you start by telling the truth, even when it hurts. Jacob nodded, wiping his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he began to feel free.